Well, welcome everyone. We're glad that you took some time today to join us for this important webinar on the path to net zero with EnergyCAP. My name is Dave Ulmer. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer for EnergyCAP, and I'm joined today by Lalit Agarwal. Lalit, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Thank you again for joining, everyone. My name is Lalit Agarwal, and I am the Vice President of Energy Management and Sustainability at EnergyCAP here.
Well, welcome. As I said before, we believe that this is an important topic and one that is on the top of minds for many individuals. And in fact, we've had a record registration for this webinar. So we know that it's a topic that's top of mind for many of you. Now, whether you're in the beginning stages of trying to figure out, well, what does net zero mean? What does a path to sustainability mean for our organization? Maybe you're somewhere in the middle where you're trying to evaluate options and come up with tactical approaches, or maybe you're someone who feels like you really are a champion and you're doing this well. I think you're going to get something out of this webinar. Really two purposes. One is to help inform. We want to make sure everyone is aware of the topics and the issues at hand. And then second is to make sure that you have the ability to actually take action. And we're going to talk about some of the tools and ways that that can happen within your organizations. But first, let's talk a little bit about who EnergyCAP is. So some of you are already EnergyCAP customers, and you may be familiar with EnergyCAP and maybe have been using our software for potentially decades. Others of you, we may be a new name to you. So EnergyCAP has been producing software for over 40 years, and we are the #1 trusted energy and sustainability ERP. And what does that mean? Well, that means that over 10,000 users use our platform as their system of record for recording utility bill data, GHG data, to help them meet their sustainability goals, to help report on their progress towards those goals, and to be able to share that information effectively with others, whether it's in their organization, whether it's in the public, or maybe it's other stakeholders or shareholders within their organizations as well. Just to give you an example of the scale that we're talking about here, in 2021, we processed over $17 billion worth of vendor utility bills for our customers. And we had over 31,000 reports generated out of the databases that we host for our customers every month. So not only are we seeing a lot of data coming in that people are finding value to record this information, but they're also finding effective ways to get that information out to others, because that's an important part of telling your story. So today we're going to talk a little bit about those elements as we talk about the path to net zero and making progress on your sustainability goals. As we progress throughout the webinar, one thing I want to mention is that if you do have any questions, you can use the Q&A button to send questions in. We'll leave some time at the end of the webinar for us to talk through some of those questions. As we go through as well, don't feel like you have to take copious notes. This is being recorded, and it will be made available to all registrants within 24 hours. It'll be posted on energycap.com, and you'll receive information about the recording as well. So you can review it or maybe even share it with some of your colleagues. So why are we talking about this right now? Well, there are a lot of reasons, but I'm going to point to a very specific example. This is part of a report that was published by the IPCC just this month in April of 2022, discussing what does the future look like as we think about sustainability and that path to net zero. And what they laid out in the report is that we really are at a precipice where we get to choose our destiny. And yes, if we made some choices differently in the past, we could be in a different place. But right now, we're at this point in April of 2022, we're all there at the same place. But depending on how we decide to allocate our resources, the priorities that we decide for our organizations, we can either help lead the entire planet towards a better place where we are living a more sustainable environment for not just us, but for generations to come. Or if we ignore it, or we choose to continue to make certain decisions, we can make things continue to deteriorate at an alarmingly increasing pace. But we're really at this place where we get to choose our own adventure. And that's why we're so glad that you're here with us today to begin or continue this discussion about sustainability and the path to net zero. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lalit to talk us through the first portion of our agenda today.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's very exciting to see all the interest, and it's not really surprising because Everybody thinks about this now, and what we are going to do in the next 45 minutes or so is that we're going to actually put some tangible aspects of sustainability and decarbonization, talk about some strategies, and then specifically show you what EnergyCAP can very easily do for you in terms of helping you achieve your sustainability goals. One thing I want to point out that here is we will use sustainability and decarbonization semi-interchangeably for this particular conversation, and you will see in a little bit what we mean by that. So first, we will talk a little bit about the background of sustainability and decarbonization. While I know everybody probably on this call is very familiar with it, but we want to do a little bit of a background check on ourselves. So before we go into the content, though, we want to engage you. We want to hear from you as to what you're seeing, how important are sustainability and decarbonization for your organization. So I would ask you to take a few seconds here and please respond to this poll. How important are sustainability and decarbonization for your organization? Are they mission critical, very important, kind of important, somewhat, not at all important, or maybe you don't have an opinion about it at this time? So please take a few seconds here. We'll keep it open for maybe another 20 seconds, and we'll share the results with you and move on.
So within the Zoom tool, whether you're on a mobile device or a desktop device, you should see this poll called Decarbonization Importance. If you could submit your answer in the next few seconds, we'll review the group's answers together.
Well, the results are in, at least from the people who are on the call right now and who willingly submitted. And as you can see very easily, you all are able to see 90+% of our audience thinks that it's at least somewhat important, and more than 75% think it's mission critical or very important. That should not come as a surprise to all of us, but sometimes you always have a little bit of a gut check on where we stand, at least when it comes to the audience. So thank you very much for taking a few seconds and making this an active participation. So we'll jump straight into the content now. So sustainability, what is sustainability? So the definition of sustainability is avoiding of depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. That's a really good definition from Wikipedia, but ultimately in a very simple sense, it is if you have a finite resource, you want to make sure you don't deplete it at a rate where you will run out of that resource before you need more of it. So that's one aspect of sustainability. The other aspect is the ecological balance that includes basically what goes into the atmosphere from a greenhouse gas perspective. So greenhouse gas is one of the most important aspects of sustainability because greenhouse gas has a very high impact. So really quickly looking at some data from US Environmental Protection Agency. I know we have some attendees on the call that are not United States based, so bear with us when we share some examples here that are more US based, but they apply to everybody. So why is greenhouse gas important? Greenhouse gases are important because they stay in the atmosphere from a few years to few thousands of years. That's one issue. The second issue is no matter where the emissions are generated, they become well mixed within the atmosphere, meaning that the measured amount becomes the same all over the world after a little period of time. So it is no longer a localized problem. It is a problem that we all face. It doesn't matter if the emissions are generated in India or China, we will be impacted by all of that. And just within the United States, in 2019, 6.5 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent was generated. And we may think, okay, so why is this even important? Well, ecosystems have always produced greenhouse gases, so why has it become very important now? Well, it's become very important now because since the first industrial revolution, we have seen an exponential increase in greenhouse gases because we have burnt a lot of fossil fuel from energy, from an industrialization, and many other aspects. And greenhouse gases have a tendency to trap heat inside the ozone layer. And when the heat is trapped inside the ozone layer, it results in increasing our global average temperature. And while the temperature increase may be not large, the impact is very big. There is impact of melting glaciers, meaning that the sea levels are rising. And maybe me living in Nebraska has very little impact from rising sea levels, but somebody who lives in Miami will see a very big impact from it. So there is an impact for the whole community at large. So we have to be very careful about it. We have seen more frequent and more intense natural disasters that have occurred. We all read about the wildfires, the stronger and stronger hurricanes that we are seeing. So all of those natural disasters are becoming more frequent and more intense in their severity. And then we have other adverse impacts. So you are probably thinking at this time, so what can I do? Well, let's first look at what some major players in the industry are doing. So we are all familiar with this small company out of Cupertino, California, called Apple. We all probably have some device that we carry in our pockets or in our briefcases on a regular basis. Well, if you didn't know, Apple already is carbon neutral for all its corporate operations. But that's not enough. They're not stopping there. They are taking it to the next level. They have a goal to become carbon neutral across its entire business manufacturing supply chain and the product lifecycle by 2030. And how they're going to achieve this is by reducing emissions by 75% in what they consume, and then also developing innovative carbon removal solutions that will take care of the remaining 25%. So that's a technology company. That's a very forward-thinking, more progressive company. So what about the next level? The next thing we think of, let's pick on airlines, and specifically United Airlines. So United Airlines has a goal of becoming 100% green by reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And this one is without relying on traditional offsets. And I'm giving an example of United, but other airlines are in the same boat. They're coming up with strategies to reduce their impact from aviation. So one of the things that United is looking at is the sustainable aviation fuel, SAF as they call it, which has 80% less carbon on a life cycle basis. And SAF includes anything from wood chips to used cooking oil. So there are a lot of other ways they are also reducing the impact of things that would have gone wasted, and they are reusing it up in aviation sector. In fact, just I think last month, there was a test flight that was done on a Rolls-Royce engine. It was either a Boeing or I think it was an Airbus that had a full successful flight purely on sustainable aviation fuel. So it's exciting where we are, where technology is leading us in terms of being able to achieve our goals. They're also looking at some carbon capture and sequestration technology. So that's a technology progressive company. That's a very traditional airline company. But we also have large institutions like Harvard University. And I know Harvard University is just one name. All the universities around the country are also dealing with this, and around the world for that matter. Their short-term goal is by 2026, they want to aggressively reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas by a lot. And then the rest of that, they cannot reduce. They will do offsets by investing in off-site, off-campus projects. And in long-term goal, 2050, they want to be completely fossil fuel free. Even though there is not a direct impact from investing and what is our shareholders going to say, for universities, the stakeholders, which is mostly students, are really making a big push for ensuring that their campuses are taking a leading role in helping the climate be more sustainable. Whether it's Harvard, whether it's a smaller college, it doesn't matter. The students are making choices, and they're choosing schools that are showing a commitment towards better sustainable practices by their institutions. Here's another example, city of San Francisco, where there is a new all-electric ordinance. Any new construction on or after June 1st, 2021, so this is already almost a year into its effect, must be all electric. So what it does is it prohibits any new infrastructure for distribution of natural gas or propane. So basically they're saying you need to be all electric. And the sentiment behind that is that electricity is more feasible when it comes to using renewable technologies than other types of energy sources. So they are really limiting any kind of natural gas or propane infrastructure unless all other aspects and avenues have been exhausted. So it's all electric, no matter the size of the building or whether it's a commercial, residential. There is no gotchas there. It's all electric. That's what they're doing there. So those are a few examples of, we have seen a big university, airline company, a big technology company, and a whole city here. I would like to engage you one more time and see if you can share some thoughts about what kind of confidence do you feel in your ability to achieve net zero. So please take a few seconds here and answer on behalf of your organization, how confident do you feel that you will be able to achieve net zero?
Again, the poll should have automatically appeared, whether using your desktop or a mobile device. If you could just take a moment to vote. We'll close the poll in just a couple seconds. We did have a question online about how many organizations are polled. Currently we have about 200 attendees on the line, so that may be 200 different organizations and maybe fewer than that, but at least those who are actively participating in the poll at this time, that's about what we're looking at. Lalit, you want to go through the results?
Yeah, so right here we see that about 5% of our audience feels very confident, and then the confidence starts dropping, and there is a big chunk, almost a quarter of us feel that we are not confident. And that's really not that surprising, because this is a very complicated challenge. This is not trivial by any means. So what we are going to do next is we are going to switch our gears and talk about some sustainability decarbonization strategies that we have at our disposal. Some of it is because we have nature that's going to help us in achieving some of these. So these are all the alternate renewable fuels. So if you don't want to emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, what can you do? Well, you can use some of these technologies that are that have a lot of information out there on the NREL website, where you go away from traditional fossil fuels into using these technologies. And typically we immediately, when we say renewable sources, we think of solar, we think of wind, but there is more to renewables than just solar and wind. Although I do want to highlight the solar PV has that nighttime with a 2 asterisk there. And that's really, if you're keeping up on the news, recently there was an article about Stanford researchers that have actually figured out how to use the current commercial solar panels and generate electricity at night. That just blew my mind. I was like, I always thought of solar as daytime thing. So what happens? So I started reading a little bit into it, and turns out that yes, they're actually using the coldness of the vacuum of space to generate some, very little, some. It's very small fraction of what a regular panel would generate at nighttime. So it may not be enough to light a city or run a chiller or any of those, but it can maybe supplement whatever generation we have at absolutely no extra work to do. If you already have solar panels, you can achieve that. So that's exciting. That's what we are looking at as smart people are working to solve this problem. A couple of things that I'm going to point out is lake source cooling. So this is an example from Cornell University, where they were looking in 2000 to replace their chiller system with new chillers. But instead, what they did was they created a 2.5 mile long pipe between their campus and down at the lake surface pipeline. And then they started sucking water from the bottom of the lake and exchanging heat with that. It was a very expensive project. It cost them about $58 million, but it resulted in 85% reduction, which is about 20 million kilowatt hours per year of energy offset. And it has a very simple 20-year simple payback. In fact, I think I read recently that this was the year where the 20-year timeline hit, and they are completely paid off in a sense. Additionally, if you are familiar that greenhouse gases include hydrofluorocarbons and chlorofluorocarbons, it basically eliminated any of those refrigerant equipment that could potentially leak and go into the atmosphere. And those fluorocarbons, sorry, that was a mouthful, they stay in the atmosphere for thousands of years. They are very notorious for how long they stay in the atmosphere. So this is a great example of using nature and the proximity to some kind of technologies that are available to you because of where you live, because of where you work, because of any kind of natural resources that you can leverage to achieve that goal. Dave, you have a comment?
Yeah, it actually combines a couple of things you said, Lalit. So I also had read the article about the nighttime solar, which is fascinating, and I understand some of you are probably saying, yeah, but it's a minuscule amount that they're collecting. Totally get that. But what's interesting about that, as well as what we see here with the lake source cooling, is some of the side benefits that are coming from people continuing to push the technology forward, right? So in the case of the Stanford nighttime solar, it's that with a very minimal investment, you're starting to get at least something extra. You're getting to double dip on some of the infrastructure you have there, even if it's a small amount. That small amount can add over time. In the case here, as you just mentioned, not only are you getting the benefit of natural resources that are cooling, but then the side benefit of not also releasing other harmful gases as a byproduct of other processes. And it's really exciting for us to continue to see this investment in new technologies, new ways to do it. This presentation, even if everything else stayed the same except technology, if we did this 10 years down the line, who knows what these slides will be filled with in terms of things that people are thinking about. And that's really exciting for us.
Right. That's very fair. And I see a question that just popped up for lake source cooling. Does the lake water heat up appreciably? Are there any impacts to the plants and animals in the lake or warmer water? I have had good fortune of actually visiting the site at Cornell University, and they did extensive studies with their environmental agencies in the state of New York. And they proved that this action actually has minimal to no impact on any wildlife or plant life. So great question. Thank you for throwing that in there. But yeah, they have done that. In fact, the project was so successful that Enwave Energy Corporation actually implemented a similar project in Toronto, Ontario. And there they draw water from Lake Ontario and serves the Toronto's financial district. So it's not just a one-off. There are other projects similar to this that are actually going on right now. The other is geothermal. So there is traditional geothermal that we install at our own homes, where we are doing just heat exchange between our condenser side of the to temper the refrigerant. But then there is also these direct use and deep geothermal. So direct use is where you have the accessibility to hot water very close to the surface of the earth, where you take the hot water directly from the earth, either through a direct exchange or you have a heat exchanger between the warm water from the ground. Iceland is a great example of how they use geothermal direct. There is a lot of heating district plants that are set up there that draw heat directly from the ground and serve the downtown communities or even residential actually in Iceland. So that's a great use of literally free heating. The other is that's still kind of in development right now is this deep geothermal, where a hole is drilled 3, 4, 5 miles deep into the ground, and you either take a source of water that's already existing down below the ground, or you pump in water, but you take the 120, 140 degree centigrade temperature water and you can serve it into a cooling loop. So sticking with my Cornell example, I love this graphic that Cornell has put together. The beauty of this graphic actually shows that there is not a single answer. And that's a great thing, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and tomorrow there is a new technology that comes around and gives you way better results. So they show here that they actually have a hydro plant on site that they use to generate electricity that comes to the campus. They have solar PV on campus. They have a CHP plant. They have this Lake Cayuga lake source cooling system. So they use this combination of technologies that are allowing them to achieve their results. No single answer, but that's a good thing. So just in general, there is more social awareness. People who are investing in companies, they are asking for their ESG goals. People who are attending colleges are making sure that they are holding their organizations to a higher level of standard when it comes to sustainability goals. We have organizations that are making mandates on when they're going to become carbon neutral. So that's great. Technology is improving. We just talked about the effectiveness of solar at night. That's awesome. And what's the result of this is that in general, the grid is becoming more greener. And we are seeing a lot more adoption of smart technology. Smart sensors are coming down in price. So there is a lot of good momentum towards our decarbonization efforts. So all those who answered that they don't feel as confident, trust me, there are a lot of good things coming down the pipe from a technology aspect that will probably automatically make some of your goals be achieved. The question that sometimes gets asked is, well, what about the last kilowatt? What if what happened in February 2021, the winter storm Uri that took down the grid in Texas? What happens when I do that? Wind and solar are intermittent. We don't always have the wind blowing, and the amount of output, even with the nighttime solar, is going to be pretty small. So the intermittency of that issue is a problem. Well, use a battery or some kind of other energy storage, whether it's chilled water storage or another aspect. Well, my answer to that is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Done is better than perfect, whatever analogy you want to use, because ultimately, even if you don't achieve 100% carbon-free energy sources for yourself, it's okay if you got to 99%, even if for those last 20 hours you had to use some kind of fossil fuel, but all of us ended up starting to do that. I think that will make a huge positive impact on our environment. Dave, you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it reminds me of the graphic that we looked at the beginning from the IPCC. And it wasn't that if we start to do something, we're going to definitely end at this particular trajectory, but even along that trajectory, you know, there are forks. And as Lalit mentioned, the important thing is that we start to do something, we start to make significant progress. It's not that we're perfect, but at least if we can start steering the ship in that direction, then at least where we end up is going to be a lot closer to where we want to be than if we just say, well, it's just impossible, so we're not going to even begin.
Right. That's very fair, Dave. So far we have talked about these strategies that are big strategies, millions, sometimes multi-millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. The deep geothermal sometimes can cost about $80 to $90 million per well. So yes, those are big dollars, big impacts, but we don't have to stop there. The other aspect of improving our GHG impact is to reduce the consumption. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to turn it over to Dave. So one of the things that we have heard a lot, we have started doing, by nature we are doing it because sometimes poor energy efficient equipment is no longer even available. So basically the idea here is that anytime you have an end of life equipment, make sure you replace it with more modern, more energy efficient alternatives. Make sure that your maintenance program is taking care of that equipment on a regular basis, because as the maintenance degrades, the equipment does too, and the cost of the degradation of equipment is probably more energy usage. So make sure you have proper maintenance programs associated with your equipment. Space management, this is big on campuses where sometimes buildings get conditioned when nobody's using it. Leverage smart technology. So space management, for example, if you have occupancy sensors, and it tickles me every time I visit our corporate office that even the broom closet in our corporate office actually has an occupancy sensor, because the technology is there. The sensors are cheap and they will impact how your energy is consumed. So please leverage that. So that's from the energy efficiency, meaning that we are still getting the same amount of energy, but more efficiently. But then there's also the energy conservation. So what if we even reduce that? So have an impact from alternate sources, have an impact from energy efficiency point of view, but then also make sure that we are doing things that are reducing our usage. So turn it off when you're not using it. Make sure you measure so you can manage. If you're not measuring, it's hard to manage how much you're using and how much you're improving, or if there are things that are happening in your buildings without your knowledge, and you maybe end up actually using more energy than you wanted to. So make sure you have a good measurement system. And then don't let that measurement just sit. Based on those measurements and observations, engage in energy audits. So if you have some building that used to use less energy and starting to trend upwards, make sure you engage in an energy audit and find out what's going on. And once you find out what's going on, don't let that sit on the shelf either. Make sure you convert that energy audit recommendation into an actual project. So that's the other aspect of it. The last thing I would say is that you're not going to be able to do this all alone. You need to find partners. And who is your partner? Well, everybody is your partner. Anybody that walks your campus, anybody that walks your corporate office, everybody is your partner. So make sure that you create tools that you can engage and educate your occupants and make them part of the solution. So you're not doing it all by yourself. And that's really what's this holistic strategy of alternate fuels, of efficiency improvements through better equipment, of conservation practices is what's really going to help us achieve our decarbonization and sustainability goals. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave. We are going to go through a slight switch over here. He's going to take over the screen share, and I'm going to give it to him.
All right, well, thank you, Lalit. I appreciate you walking us through those options. And again, today we realize that we've got folks on the line who are at all of the different stages. Some of you have started working on this years ago, and this is more of a bolster for where you're at. Others might be somewhere in the middle, and some might be just starting out. But there are some key things that you need to think about. And when we think about technology, one of the ways that you can get started or even improve the programs you have is to really manage your data well. And that's where EnergyCAP can come in as your energy and sustainability ERP to be able to help you meet those goals and help you move towards that goal of net zero. So let's talk through some of those features that are available. So as we mentioned, EnergyCAP can help you both track and tell your sustainability story, because it's one thing to track it, but it's also important for you to be able to share that information reliably and to be able to use it to your benefit as you go into conversations, as you go into strategic events, and you're thinking about opportunities that are available to you. So it's really important for you to be able to measure so that you can manage, right? You've probably heard that management saying before that if you're not measuring, it's very, very hard to manage something. So we're going to talk about ways that you can use EnergyCAP to measure what you're doing today. We're going to talk about ways that we can help you identify your high energy users so that you can target the right buildings and the right opportunities for those energy audits or for those upgrades or programs that you're going to implement. We're going to talk about how you can track energy projects in EnergyCAP and demonstrate the value of those. And then we're also going to talk about how you can engage others, which is an important part, again, of telling that story, is engaging others through tools like EnergyCAP dashboards. So let's start by talking about measuring so that you can manage your data. So this graphic shows a number of different types of data elements that your organization may already be tracking, or maybe you're thinking about what should I track, right? So these are all different things that have an impact on your sustainability goals. But not all data is created equal. And in fact, some of this data is a lot easier to get to because it may even come to you. It's not something you have to go out and find. But if you take things like utility bills and your water bills, those things actually come to you. So that makes it a whole lot easier for you to use that to your advantage. They're also your utilities and your water consumption, those are easier to measure. So we have better accuracy, and often that data is already coming to your organization. You don't have to do much to get it in the first place. Not only that, it has a significant impact on your sustainability goals, right? It has a significant impact if we're thinking about your buildings and facilities taking maybe 40% of your, or being responsible for 40% of your greenhouse gas emissions. Boy, if we can use that data to our advantage, we can make some impacts very quickly. So let's talk about how that happens. So start with measuring what you're using with accurate and complete utility data. Okay, let's use that data that's easiest to get to and very measurable. So we want to make sure you're capturing that data correctly. You have the ability to audit the data to make sure that it's right, because if you can't trust your data, then it becomes really hard to do anything downstream, or it calls into question some of the suggestions or the ideas that your organization has. We also want to show you how you can use reports to help you find where you might be missing data, because that also has a big impact. If you're trying to benchmark after your performance that you've done in the past, but your performance in the past has missing or inaccurate data, then you're shooting towards goals that may not be in the right place that you want them to be. So let's talk first about capturing your utility data. In EnergyCAP, as a bill processing platform, we have many different ways that you can get data into EnergyCAP, specifically utility bill data. We have other data types that we track, time series data, waste data. We'll talk about some of those in a minute, but when I'm talking about utility bill data in particular, you can start very simplistically and say, you know, we get these bills in the mail, let's hand key those into a tool, but we're going to put it into a tool that understands utility bills and helps us record those accurately from the very beginning. You can import spreadsheets of data. Maybe it's historic data, maybe it's data that you're getting from your utility vendors. That's another way you can get data in. Also, we know utility bill data comes in a lot of different formats, and that's why we have a service called Bill Capture to help automate this process for you. So knowing how important it is to measure your data accurately, we have a service called Bill Capture that will help take that burden away from you. And regardless of the format, if you're getting bills in the mail, or maybe you're downloading it from a website, or you want somebody else to have the mail sent to them or download the information from the website, we've got tooling available that we can, and services that we can provide to help you make sure you get your data into the system properly. But we want to make sure that that data is not just in, but it's accurate. And that's when we move on to some of our auditing capabilities. EnergyCAP has a robust utility bill auditing system that is looking out proactively as information enters into your system to identify for you where there could be problems. We're proactively looking to say, hey, it looks like maybe this bill happened to get into the system twice. That happens more often than you would imagine. And we have other metrics to say, hey, looks like we have a huge spike here, an unusual spike in use compared to historic data. Maybe your billing period looks like it's unusual. We have a bunch of different options that are available out of the box automatically to help make sure that that data is reliable. You can use it for what you need. And I'm highlighting down at the bottom here 3 particular audits that I want to draw your attention to. We're using information from your historic patterns as well as integrating weather data to come up with what is reasonable for what you should be seeing on your utility bills. And then you can say, well, how sensitively do we want EnergyCAP to tell us if there might be a problem? So maybe if you see something that is moderately bad on the use side of things, let us know about it. And then we can track it down. We can figure out what we can do about it. This comes out of the box, but it's important because if you can't trust that data, it becomes really hard to affect change within your organization that is reliable. The last piece I want to mention is that we also help you with making sure that historic data is right, making sure that you don't have holes, you don't have duplicate information in the past. Maybe you're already sitting on spreadsheets full of billing data. Well, if you bring that into EnergyCAP, we can use our reports to help identify where you might have problematic data so that you can get that cleaned up so that you're not fighting with data problems as you move into the future. And in particular, this happens to be one of the reports that we have available that specifically highlights in different colors here when you have months that have no bills, when you have months that might have multiple bills that are a problem. And we understand that a number of our customers have deregulated accounts where you may have both a supply bill and a distribution bill. It's equally as important that you have both of those bills represented in a particular month. And that's not something that a lot of other tools or systems fully understand. But this is really at the core of what EnergyCAP has been doing for decades, and we understand that. And we provide you with the tools to help make sure that your data is as accurate as possible. So now you've got your data in the system. Well, it would really be nice to know, where should you spend your energy, right? You want to make sure that any energy you're putting into this, we all have limited resources, whether it's money or time, personnel, right? All of those different things are limited. So we want to make sure that we're applying those in the direction that's going to get us the most bang for the buck, or the most benefit for what we're investing. So EnergyCAP comes with a number of tools to help identify high energy users and outliers. When I say users here, users, buildings, right? Buildings, meters, et cetera. So here are some examples of some of our groups and benchmarking tools and how those can be used. In this particular case, I'm showing how weather normalized data can be compared across your facilities. So you can even group your facilities together, whether it's maybe by the age of the building, maybe it's by the construction type, maybe it's by how the building is used. I want all my dining halls or residence halls to be combined together. I want all my office buildings combined together. You know what? Warehouses are big, right? And they may not have the same EUI per square foot, right? But warehouses take up a lot of energy. So maybe I want to compare all my warehouses together and I want to see how I'm performing. EnergyCAP has those tools built out of the box, automatic for you to use. This is one example of how you can compare your buildings and your facilities from a weather normalized perspective to see where do you have EUI outliers so that you can identify where you're going to get the best opportunities for savings if you make a change in a particular facility. We also identify cost savings. So not just the use side, but we realize these can go hand in hand as you release more of the spending that you're currently doing. If you can reclaim that and point it in the direction of sustainability efforts, right? That's a big win because you're not asking for more budget. You're saying, hey, maybe I can save in this area and I can reapportion some of that savings to do new efforts, right? Always a challenge to try to find the budget that you need to get the things done that you want to get done. We'll take your buildings, we'll line them up and say, hey, these are the buildings that have the greatest cost savings. What we mean by that is if I could get the cost per square foot of these facilities down to the average for the other buildings of a similar building type, wow, I could save this much per year, which would, again, allow me to do other efforts, all right? So again, you're taking your time away from doing a lot of data analysis in the background and saying, okay, EnergyCAP's gonna present that information to me right here. I'm gonna spend my time on digging into these outliers to find out where those opportunities are for savings. I've been talking about that at the facility level, but we also drill all the way down to the meter level, right? We know that for a particular facility, you may have many different meters. If you have sub-meters, even if you have multiple vendor meters at a particular site, you may want to be able to see specific parts of your organization that could be causing you problems, right? Because if you look at the building level, the building might look okay, but then if you drill down to the meter, you say, oh, wow, there's something going on with this process that we're not aware of. And that's lost opportunity for you to both save on a cost from a cost perspective, but also on an energy and a sustainability perspective as well. So we do that meter by meter analysis. We also highlight we easily identify those outliers. So not only are we looking at things like EUI, but then we're also comparing it with the size of the facility to say, you know what, not only is that an outlier, but because of its size, you've got the greatest opportunity there. Or maybe that's an outlier from an EUI perspective, but you know what, that's a very, very small facility and you could put a lot of energy into that, but you're only going to get a little bit of a gain from that. So it's probably not the best place to start. So these are all tools, again, that if you have your data in EnergyCAP, you have it in a reliable way, using the auditing and all those different things. This just comes along with it. So you can start to apply your energy and your time into the space of making productive change instead of chasing things down in the background. We also provide the ability to put this information into dashboards, and when you can use dashboards to also help you identify outliers. And why is that important? Well, some of you are experts at the tools that you use, whether it's EnergyCAP or something else, but you know that the broader teams that you work with are typically not experts at that one tool that you use day to day, right? So things like EnergyCAP dashboards are a simplified way to present your data that it makes sense to other people within your organization so that you can take that information and you can do something about it, or you can justify what you're working on. We're going to come back to some of the power of dashboards in just a moment. This is just another view that we provide on our dashboards. This is a tree view. And again, similar to showing the outliers in terms of their relative value to your organization to making a change, this really clearly identifies where you've got those big building users or big costs in your organization that you may be able to make the most effective use of change. I want to mention that EnergyCAP also has the ability not just to help you identify where you should do projects, but then once you are doing the projects, we can help you track your projects in one central location, along with your utility data, along with your other sustainability data. So you have it all in one place. Here's an example of one of our customers who uses energy projects tracking in a very effective manner to track the projects that they're doing throughout their organization. They're tracking when they did those projects, the cost of those projects, the benefits, et cetera. So you have the options available within EnergyCAP, again, all within that one tool, that one ERP, that energy ERP, that's allowing you to both see information as it comes in, but also track what you're doing with that information on the other side of it. We talked about the importance of being able to tell your story. So I want to show you a couple of examples of how one tool in particular within EnergyCAP can really help you tell your story, and that's public dashboards. I talked about the fact that you can build dashboards within our tooling to help others within your organization, but you can go even one step further, and you can take those dashboards and you can make those publicly accessible. Now, public means something different to every organization. Public could mean I take a dashboard within EnergyCAP and I put it on our intranet site, and now all of our employees around the world are all looking at the same information, and they all have the ability to see the same thing that I'm seeing. But for others, they've taken it one step further. They said, you know, our stakeholders are the public. We are a public entity, or we want to make sure that we're showing, putting our best foot forward in terms of what we're doing or showing the opportunities that are available. You can do that with EnergyCAP out of the box, taking our dashboards and making them public. So here are two examples of that. One of those is from the University of Nebraska. They've taken EnergyCAP and they've made public dashboards for facilities that they have been doing energy projects on, and to help tell their story and support the use case for what they're doing to curtail energy and to improve sustainability on their campus. So what they've done here is, with this happens to be one building that they've created a public dashboard for. They've added their images, they've added other text to help people understand what they're talking about. But not only have they done it with one building, they have a drop down of multiple buildings. So here's another building that you could pick from that same drop down. And again, all this data is being served from EnergyCAP Live. It's refreshed just anytime anybody refreshes the page. Did not require additional development. It just comes out of the EnergyCAP system. It can either be embedded on a website, or it can be an entirely dedicated public website right out of the box. Here's one more building from the University of Nebraska. Again, I think they do a really good job of being able to draw in those people who are looking at these websites by including pictures and descriptions and talking about the programs that they've implemented to really tell their story well and support their cases. The other example I wanted to show is from the city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia, by population, is the 6th largest city in the United States. And they have a robust energy and sustainability program that they've been implementing for many years. And they've been tracking EnergyCAP. They've been tracking their data in EnergyCAP throughout much of that program. So what they've done is they've created a website that's available to the public. You can go check it out yourself, where you can see their energy and sustainability data directly from EnergyCAP shared as a public dashboard. So they have a landing page, they allow people to drill into that information, and then they have multiple different ways that they show it, again, telling their story in a way that supports the efforts that they're putting in, and really helping them get credit for the hard work that they're putting in to both tracking their data and then doing something valuable with that data on the other side of it. One other element I want to mention, and we have a number of customers who do this, but maybe you haven't thought about doing chargebacks or essentially breaking apart vendor bills within your organization. EnergyCAP has a robust chargeback process and module, and many of our customers use that to help track whether it's sub-metering data or allocation data within their campuses or organizations. Now, many people, when they think about that, they think about allocating cost, right? And maybe they're thinking about it from a cost reimbursement perspective, but it can do so much more than that. When you sub-meter or you want to allocate your vendor bills to different facilities, that same data that you're using to break apart into pieces can be used to come up with GHG calculations for each of those facilities, so that you can more accurately say, not just that our campus has this overall greenhouse gas effect, but I can go down to a particular building that I've sub-metered, and I can use that same information to report on the greenhouse gas impacts of that facility, whether you have sub-meters or you're using some type of an allocation process, whether it's square footage or some other type of weighted allocation. EnergyCAP has built-in tools that do this, and all of those sustainability metrics come out of the box as you're using that functionality. It really can help with engagement when you get the data down to the level that it means something to your employees or your constituents, and they say, oh, that's the building that I'm in. that helps get them engaged with your program, and it allows you to have a better hold of their attention as you're moving forward with your programs. So one of the last things I want to mention here is just, what does EnergyCAP do for me when we're thinking, let's think specifically about greenhouse gas. Like, how does that work within EnergyCAP? Is it complicated? What do I get? Well, let me just mention that first off, EnergyCAP, as an organization, we are collecting publicly available GHG emission factors, and we're loading all of that information in the background for our customers. So out of the box, if a customer starts to track their utility bills in EnergyCAP, we already have standard industry-based factors that are being used for tracking things like natural gas or electricity based on the part of the country that you're in. That just comes with it, diesel fuel, et cetera. All of those energy-based fuels, that information is already there. It's based on industry sources, and we show those industry sources that we're using as part of the product. So you can see it, and again, you can rely on the data. That just comes as part of the service that we provide to our customers. But we do have some customers who want to use their own factors. Maybe they have certain purchase power agreements where they're getting more renewable energy than the grid would typically provide. Maybe they have certain service providers that are providing services to them that they need to track in a different way. Maybe they're using district energy, steam, or other services that don't have industry provided GHG factors. Well, EnergyCAP has the ability to track those as well. So those can be brought into the system by our customers and used. And whether it comes from the industry standard or from what the customer provides, that gets mapped to the physical location of a particular meter. So a particular building, and we know for this particular meter at this particular site, these are the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with usage that happens at this location. So then as utility bill data comes into the system, regardless of the source, whether it's hand typed or imported, it comes in through our bill capture process, regardless of the source, as the bills enter the system, we automatically calculate for our customers we automatically determine the emitted gases associated with that meter at that location based on the utility bills. We then automatically convert all of those gases into the CO2 equivalents so that you can have standardized reporting. And again, almost all of this process is completely automatic. Sure, you can provide custom factors if you want to, but if you don't, right out of the box, if you don't know where to start, if you start tracking your utility bills in EnergyCAP, we will start to produce greenhouse gas data that you can use to help support your sustainability goals and tracking. The last thing I'm going to mention today is that utility bills are a great first place to start, but there's this kind of next level of data. It might be a little bit harder to track. Some of your organizations may be tracking it, maybe not others. But if you do start to gather this information on your own, what do you do with it? Things like your interval energy data, maybe your waste data, your transportation data, whether it's for your employees or for the goods and services that you provide. Well, EnergyCAP has the means to track that as well. So a lot of times we think about the energy commodities and electric and gas and things like that. But here's just an example. This is just an example. We have even more that we can track, but this is an example of the other things that are not traditional utilities that you can also track in EnergyCAP that you can assign greenhouse gas factors to and use that information then to be an integrated view of your emissions and then your sustainability progress. So that was a lot. We've talked through sustainability and decarbonization. Lalit walked us through some sustainability strategies, and then we've talked very tactically about how EnergyCAP and the tooling that we provide can help you, regardless of where you are on that spectrum, get towards your goals. So with that, we are going to open it up to the Q&A. I've seen some questions come in along the way. If you have other questions, please use the Q&A button in Zoom to submit those. And if we don't get a chance to answer your question today, know that we will follow up with you after the session.
Thanks, Dave. That's a pretty amazing. I mean, so many things that get done automatically once the data is in the system is just amazing. And I forgot to mention earlier, before I joined EnergyCAP 3 months ago, I actually was a customer of EnergyCAP at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And some of those features where you enter data once and it gets, you can slice and dice it the way you want, the automated greenhouse gas calculation, those were the selling points, at least for me as a customer when I was on the other side of the fence. Couple of questions that have come in that I've typed in the answers. I'll go ahead and read it verbally here. And I have answered them, but maybe Dave, you have some other thoughts on that. So one question that came in was, once the outliers are identified via both high-level utility analysis, what are the typical strategies to improve EUI while staying within the ECAP ecosystem. My answer was that once you identify the outlier, the typical engagement next would be either leveraging other systems like building automation system to drill down and try to figure out where exactly their high energy use is coming from, or even engaging in a physical energy audit. And depending on whatever you found, you may take it may be as simple as asking janitorial staff to turn off the lights at night, or it may require some equipment upgrade. Do you have any other thoughts to that, Dave?
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add, those are great examples. One thing I'm going to add that I think is a little surprising, one of our customers helps provide energy management programs to help people save. And across their portfolio of customers, they have on average, say between 25 and 30% of use without equipment changes. So how are they doing that? Well, it's really through education and behavioral changes, right? It's taking the time to look at the data, to identify those opportunities, and then drill in. And one thing I'll add is that EnergyCAP can track interval data for you as well. So some of our customers, when they find those opportunities, they drill into the interval data that they're bringing in for those buildings, and then they can identify things like unusual startup processes where everything's starting up simultaneously, or potentially opportunities where we have certain days of the week that for whatever reason, the systems are not turning off at the times that they should. So whether it's using the technology further or replacing things in your building or even behavioral, those are all options. And I wouldn't limit yourself to any one of those. Those are all options that you can pursue as you attempt to reduce the use in those particular facilities.
Right. Going back to there is no single answer. There's so many ways to approach that.
Yep.
Another question that came out that probably is more appropriate to ask you is, are there plans to further develop project tracking and automate savings calculation? And I said there are additional items on our product roadmap to continue enhancing the modules related to energy project tracking. Anything else you want to add, Dave?
No, that's a great answer, Lalit. And you know, because now as a former customer and now an EnergyCAP employee, you know how seriously EnergyCAP is continuing to invest in our greenhouse gas tracking and sustainability tracking and services for our customers. So you may have been an EnergyCAP user for a while and you've seen what we've had. Get ready, because you're going to continue to see further development even within this next year, that we're going to be releasing even more opportunities. And project tracking is one of those things that will definitely be considered as part of those enhancements, because we want to continue to be leading you with the tools that are available to help you meet those goals that your organizations have.
Okay. Another question that I think, Dave, you will enjoy, I think, answering is artificial intelligence or machine learning, are they part of the reports, dashboards, or separate modules? And could we build notifications around it?
Oh, that's great. I felt like you gave me a little softball there, Lalit. So yes, one of the things I talked about, just one example, okay, and it's just one example of a couple within the application, is the auditing that we're doing on utility bills. So we're using learning processes that are taking the bills as they come in. They're looking at your historic patterns, they're looking at seasonality, they're looking at weather data, because all of that comes together to determine what's reasonable. And then we're using that to automatically highlight for our customers where there are potentially problematic bills. And a problematic bill could be a billing error, but it's really bad if it's not a billing error. And instead, it's a problem with a process or facility that you need to drill into. So yes, we have tooling like that available. And we also have a notification platform that we built into the application to assist with things like notifying you of certain processes. If you are an EnergyCAP customer, I highly recommend you consider using Report 13, which allows you to do outlier analysis, to identify these outlier bills that I've been talking about, uses that same learning that I just talked about. You can set that up as a regular distribution to be sent to you, whether it's on a daily, a weekly, a monthly basis, so that you don't even have to go looking for any of this information. It comes to you so that you have it even in your inbox and you can take a look at it. Even if you're on the road on your phone, you can identify something and then get the process started as soon as possible to move towards resolution. Because we all know that the sooner you can resolve an issue, not only is it going to save your organization money, it's going to save energy, and ultimately then that's saving the environment as well, the sooner we can get to those problems.
Great. I'll do this last question, and I think the answer is yes, but I'll let you answer. Is EnergyCAP able to identify most narrowly applicable emission factors for use, meaning utility data versus grid data versus country level data?
Yeah, so if I understand the question, I'll just mention that yes, let's take electricity as an example. EnergyCAP already has built in multiple electricity factors that are being provided by eGrid as an example from the EPA, which can be assigned to meters based either on a state, by grid region, or as we mentioned before, you can also have your own custom factors. So I happen to know from discussions with Lalit about some of the unique scenarios that the University of Nebraska has. And we've talked about how they have some emission factors that are going to be different than anybody else in the world. They're the only organization like that. They can have all of these factors that have already been built in, and they can also add their own on top of it. And they have the full flexibility to choose which ones to use, and also to let those factors change over time, because we know they do as the fuel mix changes, the fuel, the grid, and other services that are supplied to us.
Well, unfortunately, we are at the top of the hour, and I know we have a few more questions that didn't get answered. Trust us, we will get back to you on those answers. We really appreciate you logging in and being an active participant, not just a passive participant even. Appreciate you responding to the polls. It is so great to see all the excitement around this very important initiative for not just us, but for our future generations to come. So thank you very much for signing in. Any last parting remarks, Dave?
Thank you for your attention. I'm excited to see what we're going to do together, because I really believe that we can make an impact if we all work towards this important topic.
Thank you. And as a reminder, you will get the recording delivered to you within a day or two.
Take care, everyone.
Yep. Bye.